Othello is a play about envy and jealousy, but it also touches on other themes such as the treatment of the foreigner. Othello is a Moor, a somewhat loose term, but in this context probably referring to a black or possibly Arab man from North Africa. It opens in Venice, in Shakespeare's time a prosperous and powerful city-state, at the heart of European civilization, before moving to Cyprus, a colonial possession of the Venetians, under constant threat of invasion by the Turks. Thus, the action moves from the safety, security, and order of a long-established state and stable political regime to a place of danger on the edge of a hostile empire that is under threat of military conquest, mirroring the change from the secure and loving bond of marriage between Othello and Desdemona, and its disintegration into mistrust, jealousy, and eventually murder. And crucially, the play takes place within the spiritual framing of Christianity, which infused the worldview of Shakespeare's audiences, and is revealed in the biblical references and terminology of heaven and hell throughout the play. Othello is a respected general and held in high regard by the Duke of Venice and the group of noblemen who run the city. The Duke addresses him as Valiant Othello. Iago, one of his subordinates, is the man consumed with envy, who sets out to destroy him, and with Machiavellian cunning, manipulates all around him for his own purposes. A persistent criticism of the play has been the obscurity of Iago's motives for acting as he does. But I think the answer to this will become clearer as we go through the play. The play opens with Iago in conversation with the rather sappy and gullible Rodrigo, a Venetian gentleman who is in love with Desdemona, a senator's daughter who, it is revealed, has just eloped with Othello and is now his wife. Rodrigo is consumed with jealousy and petty resentment of Othello for marrying the woman he loves. Iago uses his jealousy to cynically entrap him with half-truths and use him as a dupe for his own plans. Iago has persuaded Rodrigo to pay him to further his cause with Desdemona, and seeks to assure him that they are on the same side, that Iago too has good reason to hate Othello. Iago is presented as a character roiled in bitterness and malevolence, but with a persuasive tongue, a talent for deceit, and a confident display of worldly wisdom. Aggrieved that he has been passed over for promotion by Othello, he declares, "I follow him to serve my turn upon him," openly professing his desire for revenge for this perceived wrong. And he does not stop there. He goes on to expound his philosophy of self-interest, deploring those who believe in loyal service and expressing admiration for those who deceive and exploit their masters. "Whip me such honest knaves. Others there are who, trimmed in forms and visages of duty, keep yet their hearts attending on themselves. These fellows have some soul." The phrase honest knaves introduces a deliberate confusion of the moral order, deprecating and mocking the very idea of fidelity. Similarly, the religious language of soul that he uses to praise those who abuse the trust of their superiors inverts the Christian understanding of what is right and good. His statement later in the same speech that "I am not what I am" is not only a bold assertion of his duplicitous nature, but also in its echoing of God's declaration of his identity I am that I am, in the book of Exodus, implies that he is the direct negative image of God, and we may begin to get an idea of the kind of character that Shakespeare is presenting in Iago. When he persuades the hapless Rodrigo to go to the house of Brabantio, Desdemona's father, to stir up trouble, he remains in the shadows, his identity hidden, as he yells up at Brabantio's window the grossest descriptions of the marriage of Othello and Desdemona. Even now, very now, an old black ram is tupping your white ewe. The animal imagery he uses here and later in the scene, Barbary horse, the beast with two backs, plays into ingrained ideas of the foreigner as uncivilized and bestial, and is clearly intended to arouse a sense of revulsion in Brabantio. Shakespeare plays too with a contrast between black and white, as Iago further refers to Othello as the devil, who was often shown symbolically as a black figure. Thus, he seeks to link Othello's black appearance to the idea of evil, as ironically, he plots maliciously from the shadows.
Brabantio too clings to another stereotype of the foreigner as possessing strange, dark powers, as he seeks to understand what is to him the incomprehensible elopement of his daughter. Is there not charms by which the property of youth and maidhood may be abused? Yet even as Othello is smeared in this way, Iago reluctantly reveals that he is no cheap seducer, but in fact a man of substance indispensable to the state. Another of his fathom have they none to lead their business. In fact, as Brabantio rushes to confront him for taking away his daughter, Othello is at the same time being sought out by the state to lead a force against the Turks who are threatening an imminent invasion of Cyprus. It is only now that we are introduced to Othello and see him in interactions first with Iago, then Brabantio, then in the council chamber with the Duke of Venice and senators. And we are able to see the contrast between his conduct and the way in which he has been characterized by others. When told by Iago of Brabantio's rage against him, Othello remains calm and dignified. Let him do his spite. My services which I have done the Signory shall out-tongue his complaints. He is confident of his own worth and reputation, and he is dismissive of the imputation that he is some sort of gold-digger, asserting the importance of his own lineage and reminding the audience of the fact that foreign peoples have their own hierarchies and standards of glory that are not dependent on ours. I fetch my life and being from men of royal siege, and my demerits may speak unbonneted to as proud a fortune as this that I have reached. In striking contrast to the vulgar language used by Iago to impute a base lascivious motive for his union with Desdemona, Othello makes clear that the only reason for his marriage is that I love the gentle Desdemona. When Iago advises Othello to hide from Brabantio and his friends, he calmly refuses. Not I. I must be found. My parts, my title, and my perfect soul shall manifest me rightly. Unlike Iago, who likes to operate in the dark and under cover of deceit, Othello believes he has nothing to hide, and so wishes to be open and honest, that people may judge him on his merits. When Brabantio and others arrive in a fury with weapons drawn, Othello's tranquil response is one of peace and honour, refusing to be provoked or react with ire. Keep up your bright swords, for the dew will rust them. Biblical imagery is again suggested here, as Othello's plea to them to sheath their weapons recalls Christ's admonition to Peter when he strikes the servant of the high priest who comes to arrest him. Put up thy sword into the sheath. These subtle resonations with the biblical texts, which occur throughout Shakespeare's writings, enable him to hint at depths of meaning with the lightest of touches, and would have been easily comprehensible to his contemporary audience. Othello, though a brave warrior, is a man of peaceful instincts, self-controlled and slow to anger, and ready and unafraid to submit himself to questioning. This quiet reliance on the truth and justice of his position is evident in his response to the Duke of Venice's request that he relay his side of the story. Though he humbly professes himself to be lacking in eloquence, he nonetheless pledges to give a simple and straightforward answer. By your gracious patience, I will a round, unvarnished tale deliver. In fact, in speaking of the tales of his life that had beguiled Desdemona, he displays a rich talent for storytelling. Wherein I spake of most disastrous chances, of moving accidents by flood and field, of hairbreadth scapes i' the imminent deadly breach, of being taken by the insolent foe and sold to slavery, of my redemption thence, and with it all my travels' history, wherein of Anta's vast and deserts idle, rough quarries, rocks, and hills whose heads touch heaven, it was my hint to speak. Such was the process. And of the cannibals that each other eat, the anthropophagi and men whose heads do grow beneath their shoulders. Thus, it is clear that Othello is not only a noble warrior, but also a man with a fascinating life story, full of exotic adventures, dangerous encounters, and adversities overcome. The audience can understand when he explains of Desdemona that she loved me for the dangers I had passed, and I loved her that she did pity them. By contrast, Brabantio's fulminations against what he sees as the unnatural attraction of his daughter to a black man seem desperate, absurd, and mean-spirited. She is abused, stolen from me, and corrupted by spells and medicines bought of mountebanks. For nature so preposterously to err, being not deficient, blind, or lame of sense, sans witchcraft could not. The imagery of spells and black magic that is used of Othello suggests a kind of superstition about Africans that is easily dispelled by the character of Othello himself, and Shakespeare contrasts this rather sophomoric caricature of Othello with the more serious, demonic imagery associated with Iago, who ends the first act with a determined plan to destroy Othello's life. I have it, it is engendered. Hell and night must bring this monstrous birth to the world's light. Desdemona makes a brief appearance in the first act, first to respectfully confirm her free choice of Othello to her father, and then to plead with the Duke to allow her to accompany her new husband to Cyprus. She makes it clear that she loves Othello for his strong character and brave spirit, and desires to share his life of adventure with him, even when it involves danger. I saw Othello's visage in his mind, and to his honours and his valiant parts did I my soul and fortunes consecrate. So that, dear lords, if I be left behind a moth of peace, and he go to the war, the rights for which I love him are bereft me. It is clear that she is a courageous and determined woman who is totally devoted to her husband. She loves him not for any superficial reasons, but for his inherent qualities. Thus, by the end of the first act, Shakespeare has presented a cast of characters that seem to be clearly delineated in terms of light and darkness, with Othello and Desdemona motivated by love, truth, and fidelity, supported by the decency of the Duke of Venice, and others driven by various manifestations of self-indulgent desire, anger, prejudice, envy, and hatred. In his anger, Brabantio attempts to plant a malicious seed of doubt in Othello's mind about Desdemona. Look to her more, if thou hast eyes to see. She has deceived her father, and may thee. Othello's counter is sure and true, but desperately poignant in light of later events. My life upon her faith. Of course, Othello is right to trust Desdemona. However, he is not discriminating enough in his trust. He also trusts Iago and addresses him as honest Iago, and Iago with cunning shrewdness judges him well. The Moor is of a free and open nature, that thinks men honest that but seem to be so. Othello, judging by his own standards, naturally thinks well of others, and is thus vulnerable to the clever machinations of a wicked man like Iago, whose cynical philosophy and ruthless manipulation of others is displayed in his conversation with Rodrigo and final soliloquy at the end of the act. His thoughts seem to echo the ideas of the ancient Greek philosopher Protagoras, who declared that man is the measure of all things, implying that there is no objective moral truth, and sneers at Rodrigo when he talks of virtue. Virtue, a fig. 'Tis in ourselves that we are thus or thus. Our bodies are our gardens, to the which our wills are gardeners. The imagery of a garden suggests a defiant contradiction of the Judeo-Christian idea of Eden, created by God according to his order. Iago asserts that men can create their own order according to their own desires, and it is clear that his desires are base as he seeks revenge against Othello, and material as he repeatedly urges Rodrigo to put money in thy purse in order that he can drain it. He makes this clear in his final soliloquy. Thus do I ever make my fool my purse. He reveals his contempt for Rodrigo, whom he dismisses as a snipe, and his Machiavellian attitude to all other people, whom he regards merely as tools to be manipulated for his own ends. He concocts a plan to persuade Othello that Cassio, the man promoted instead of him to the position of Othello's lieutenant, is carrying on an affair with Desdemona, and thereby hopes to both gain Cassio's place himself and wreck Othello's happiness. A further hint of his motivation for such malice is given in this soliloquy. I hate the Moor, and it is thought abroad that twixt my sheets he's done my office. I know not if to be true, yet I, for mere suspicion in that kind, will do as if for surety. Shakespeare here displays a subtle understanding of the psychology of evil that always seeks to justify itself. Iago pretends that he is a victim of Othello's lust and has been cuckolded by him, though he admits he has no evidence of this beyond his claims of vague rumours. Yet his desire to have a reason for his hatred is so fierce that he engenders a myth of victimhood in his own mind that disguises even to himself his true motivation for wishing to destroy Othello. The ancient sin of hatred and envy of what is good.